Nothing hurts more than doing everything right and still feeling left behind. You wake up every day carrying quiet hope, but night after night, nothing changes. You start questioning yourself in silence. Was I patient for nothing? Did I trust the wrong timing? Did life forget me? The waiting becomes heavy, and the doubt starts whispering when you're alone. But what if this pause isn't empty? What if it's loaded with something you can't see yet, but will soon feel all at once? Watch this video till the end. Subscribe, and like to understand why this delay may be protecting you. There is a specific kind of exhaustion that comes from waiting with no answers. Not the kind where you're physically tired, but the kind where your chest feels heavy for no clear reason. You've done your part. You've prayed, worked, hoped, stayed patient. And still, nothing moves. No sign. No confirmation. Just silence. And in that silence, your mind begins to question everything. You start wondering if you misunderstood the signs, if you believed too deeply, if you trusted too much. The days feel longer because you're carrying invisible tension. You try to act normal around others, but inside, you're calculating time, replaying conversations, searching for proof that something is still unfolding. Waiting without answers doesn't just test your patience, it tests your identity. It makes you confront the parts of yourself that crave certainty. What makes it heavy is that no one else can see it. On the outside, your life may look stable, but internally, you're in suspension. You're standing between effort and outcome, and the space in between feels endless. Doubt creeps in quietly. It doesn't shout. It whispers. It asks you whether you should lower your expectations, whether you should stop believing in what you once felt so sure about. And that's where the real pressure begins. Because waiting without clarity forces you to sit with yourself. There's nothing to chase, nothing to fix, nothing to distract you from the uncertainty. It strips away illusions of control. It exposes how deeply you attach your peace to visible progress. You realize how uncomfortable it is to not know. But here's what you slowly begin to understand. This phase is not empty. It is demanding something from you. It is strengthening parts of you that instant results never could. The resilience forming right now doesn't come from achievement. It comes from endurance. From choosing not to collapse when answers don't arrive on your schedule. From holding your ground internally when the external world offers no reassurance. Waiting is psychologically heavy because it stretches your trust. It forces you to separate who you are from what is happening. It teaches you that your worth is not measured by speed, and your direction is not validated by immediate confirmation. You may not see movement. You may not hear clarity. But something inside you is being reshaped. Your tolerance for uncertainty is expanding. Your emotional depth is growing. Your strength is becoming quieter, steadier. And one day, when things finally shift, you'll realize that the waiting did not weaken you. It refined you. It built a version of you that can handle what's coming next. The weight you're carrying right now is not proof that nothing is happening. It is proof that something inside you is learning how to stand without answers. When something you're waiting for doesn't arrive, your mind doesn't label it as timing. It labels it as rejection. You tell yourself you're fine, but deep down, a quiet story begins forming. Maybe you weren't good enough. Maybe you misread your importance. Maybe if it hasn't happened by now, it never will. Delay doesn't just slow things down. It touches old wounds you thought you had already healed. You replay moments where you gave your best and still didn't get chosen. You think about how easily things seem to work out for others and how often you're asked to wait. That waiting starts to feel personal, like life is intentionally skipping over you. And the longer the pause lasts, the more your self-worth becomes tangled with the outcome you can't control. What hurts most isn't the delay itself. It's the meaning you attach to it. You start believing silence means disinterest, that absence means disapproval, that if something mattered, it would have arrived faster. Your confidence begins to erode quietly, not because you failed, but because you're interpreting timing as judgment. But here's the shift that changes everything. Delay is not a verdict on your value. It is not proof that you're unwanted, unseen, or incapable. It's simply time doing what it does, moving independently of your emotions, When you confuse delay with rejection, you turn neutral pauses into personal attacks, and that creates unnecessary pain. You begin to realize that some things don't come when you're ready to receive them emotionally, even if you think you are. Some doors stay closed not because you don't deserve what's behind them, but because opening them too early would cost you something you're still building. Clarity, stability, strength. Separating timing from self-worth is uncomfortable because it means you can't use outcomes to define yourself anymore. You have to stand on who you are without external confirmation. And that's hard, but it's also where real confidence starts forming. The moment you stop seeing delay as rejection, something inside you softens. You stop arguing with time. You stop begging for proof. You stop shrinking yourself just because progress isn't visible yet. You understand that being delayed doesn't mean being denied. And when that understanding settles in, you reclaim your power. You're no longer waiting in desperation. You're waiting with dignity, with trust, with a quiet knowing that what's meant for you isn't running late. It's arriving when it can meet the version of you who's ready to hold it without breaking. Nothing looks different from the outside. That's what makes this phase so hard to trust. You wake up in the same room, move through the same days, face the same silence. No signs, no breakthroughs, no proof that anything is happening. And a quiet voice inside you starts whispering that you're stuck, that you're falling behind, that stillness means failure. But what you don't see yet is that stillness is never empty. When life stops moving on the surface, it begins working beneath it. This is the part no one talks about. The slow, uncomfortable season where growth doesn't announce itself. Where nothing changes around you, but everything is shifting inside you. Your patience is being tested. Your reactions are being rewired. Your emotional muscles are being stretched in ways that action never could. Stillness forces you to sit with yourself without distraction, without applause, without momentum to hide behind. And that's terrifying because it exposes what business once covered. Old fears rise. Doubts get louder. You become aware of patterns you used to ignore. And it feels like regression, when in reality, it's awareness sharpening. You're learning how to stay steady without reassurance, how to exist without constant progress, how to breathe through uncertainty instead of running from it. That kind of strength can't be built in motion. It only forms when you're asked to wait without answers. This is where patience stops being an idea and becomes a lived experience, where clarity grows not from information, but from silence, where emotional strength is built quietly through restraint instead of reaction. You're learning how not to collapse when nothing is happening, and that skill will carry you through everything that comes next. The mind hates this phase because it can't measure it. There are no milestones, no timelines, no evidence to point at, but your nervous system knows the truth. You're becoming more grounded, less reactive, more discerning. You're no longer chasing every impulse or fearing every pause. You're learning how to hold yourself steady. And one day, movement will return. Things will shift externally. Opportunities will appear. Momentum will build. But when it does, you won't meet it as a person you used to be. You will meet it as someone who knows how to wait without breaking, how to trust without proof, how to stay whole even when nothing is happening. That's the hidden growth of stillness. It doesn't make noise. It doesn't rush. But it changes you in ways action never could. And when life finally moves again, you'll realize this quiet phase wasn't a delay. It was preparation happening in silence. You hate this part. The part where you're asked to keep going without evidence. No signs. No confirmation. No clear signal that you're on the right path. Just effort, hope, and a quiet fear that maybe you're walking toward nothing. This is where doubt grows loud. Where your mind keeps asking for proof before it offers trust. And when proof doesn't arrive, you start questioning yourself instead. You were taught to believe in what you can see. Results, feedback, progress you can point to. So when life asks you to move without those things, it feels reckless, unsafe, like you're stepping into darkness with no guarantee the ground will hold you. And every step forward feels heavier because you're carrying uncertainty with it. But here's the truth no one prepares you for. Trust doesn't form when everything is clear. It forms when clarity disappears. When certainty leaves, something deeper is invited to take its place. Not blind hope, not forced optimism, but a quieter strength that doesn't need constant reassurance to survive. Right now, you're learning how to stand without leaning on outcomes, how to keep showing up even when nothing is validating your effort. That's not weakness, that's maturity being built. Because anyone can move forward when success is visible. Very few can continue when progress is internal and unseen. This is where your relationship with yourself changes. You start noticing that even without proof, you're still here, still breathing, still choosing not to quit, still listening to that subtle pull inside you that says this matters, even if you can't explain why. That pull isn't irrational, it's intuitive. It's a part of you that understands growth doesn't always announce itself on your timeline. Trusting what you can't see doesn't mean ignoring fear. It means walking with it without letting it lead. It means accepting that uncertainty is not a threat, but a passage, a space where control fades and self-reliance strengthens, where you learn that you don't fall apart just because answers are missing. Slowly, something shifts. You stop demanding immediate results from every step. You stop measuring your worth by how fast things are changing. You begin to feel steadier, not because life is clearer, but because you are. Your footing comes from within, not from what's happening around you. And one day, outcomes will appear. Proof will arrive. Clarity will return. But when it does, it won't feel like relief. It will feel like recognition. Because deep down, you already knew. You weren't lost. You were learning how to trust yourself before the path revealed itself. You're tired in a way that rest doesn't touch. Not because you haven't tried hard enough, but because you've been gripping time like it owes you an explanation. Every day, you replay the same questions in your head. When will it happen? Why not now? What if I'm running out of time? You don't just want things to change. You want them to change on a schedule that proves your effort meant something. That's where the exhaustion comes from. You've been trying to manage life like a deadline, measuring your worth by how quickly things move, panicking when progress doesn't match your internal clock. And slowly, without realizing it, you turn hope into pressure. You turn patience into a test you feel like you're failing. Control feels comforting at first. It makes you believe that if you plan well enough, push hard enough, worry long enough, you can force life to cooperate. But over time, that need to control starts draining you. You're not just working toward outcomes, you're fighting reality itself. And that fight never ends cleanly. Here's the part that's hard to accept. Your timeline is not the truth. It's just your fear trying to feel safe. You're afraid that if you don't control the pace, you'll lose momentum. That if you loosen your grip, everything will fall apart. That surrender means giving up on what matters to you. But surrender isn't quitting. It's releasing the belief that you know exactly how this is unfold in order to be okay. Right now, life isn't asking you to stop caring. It's asking you to stop strangling the process. When you let go of the timeline, something unexpected happens. The constant mental noise softens. The urgency eases. You start breathing deeper, not because things are solved, but because you're no longer arguing with time. You begin to realize that growth doesn't move faster when you demand it. It moves more honestly when you allow it. Releasing control doesn't mean you stop showing up. It means you stop punishing yourself for not being there yet. It means trusting that effort counts even when outcomes are delayed. That becoming takes time, and not all of it is visible. And slowly, your relationship with waiting changes. It stops feeling like rejection. It stops feeling like failure. It starts feeling like space. Space to strengthen. Space to clarify. Space to become someone who can actually hold what's coming without breaking. The moment you stop forcing the timeline, you don't fall behind. You finally stop fighting yourself. And in that release, life doesn't slip away. It begins to move again, this time with you, not against you. You can feel the urgency in your body before you name it. The constant push, the tight chest, the feeling that if you don't move fast enough, everything will slip through your fingers. You wake up already behind. You fall asleep replaying what you should have done sooner. Life starts to feel like a race you never agreed to run, but somehow you're exhausted all the same. Urgency convinces you that speed is safety. That rushing is responsibility. That slowing down means losing your edge. So you chase. You overthink. You act before you feel ready. Not because it's right, but because waiting feels unbearable. And deep down, you're afraid that if you pause, you'll be left behind. But here's what no one tells you. Urgency isn't motivation. It's fear wearing a mask. It's a fear that you're late, that you miss something, that others are moving while you're standing still. And when fear drives your movement, everything feels heavy. Every decision carries pressure. Every delay feels personal. You're not moving toward your life. You're running from the anxiety of not being there yet. Alignment feels different. Alignment doesn't shout. It doesn't demand. It doesn't panic. It's quieter than urgency, but stronger. When alignment begins to replace urgency, your body notices first. Your breathing slows. Your thoughts stop racing ahead of you. You start choosing with clarity instead of desperation. You're no longer asking, how fast can I get there? You're asking, am I ready to carry this? That shift changes everything. You realize that speed without stability only leads to collapse. That arriving early to something you're not prepared for can hurt more than arriving late. And suddenly, you're not ashamed of taking your time. You understand that readiness isn't weakness. It's wisdom. Alignment doesn't mean you stop moving. It means you stop forcing movement that isn't rooted in truth. You still act. You still grow. But now, your actions feel grounded, intentional, clean. You're not reacting to fear anymore. You're responding to what actually fits. And peace starts forming. Not because everything is perfect, but because you're no longer at war with time. You stop chasing signs. You stop needing constant reassurance. You trust your internal sense of timing more than external pressure. And for the first time, you feel something rare, steadiness. Not the kind that comes from certainty, but the kind that comes from alignment. You understand now that life doesn't reward panic. It responds to presence. And when you move from alignment instead of urgency, things don't just happen faster, they happen right. You don't feel rushed anymore. You feel ready. And that readiness carries a power urgency never could. It doesn't arrive the way you imagined. There's no explosion, no dramatic moment where everything suddenly makes sense. One day, you just notice that you're not gripping so tightly anymore. You're not scanning the horizon for signs. You're not asking every quiet moment if this is it. Something inside you has settled, and that's how it begins. For so long, arrival felt like relief you were chasing, like proof you were right to wait, like validation for every night you doubted yourself. You thought when things finally came together, you would feel overwhelmed, emotional, maybe even shocked. But real arrival doesn't feel like shock. It feels like recognition. You don't feel desperate when it happens. You feel steady. That's how you know it's real. Because what arrives at the right time doesn't need to convince you. It doesn't need urgency or fear to hold it in place. It fits into the version of you that took time to grow strong enough to carry it. And that's a part most people miss. Nothing meaningful arrives until you do. You've changed quietly, without applause, without certainty. You learn how to wait without collapsing, how to move without forcing, how to let go of timelines without giving up on yourself. And now, when things start aligning, opportunities, clarity, connection, they don't knock you off balance. They meet you where you are. You don't rush to grab them. You don't question if you deserve them. You don't fear losing them immediately, because you recognize yourself in what's arriving. That's the difference between something that excites you and something that stays. The things that arrive too early feel loud and unstable. They demand constant effort to maintain. But what comes at the right time feels grounded. It doesn't drain you. It doesn't require performance. It feels earned, not because you suffered, but because you became ready. And readiness has a calm confidence to it. You're no longer measuring your life by what hasn't happened yet. You're present enough to notice what is. You trust that if something is meant to stay, it won't need panic to keep it close. You understand now that timing isn't punishment or reward, it's alignment. This is where anticipation softens into certainty. Not certainty that everything will be perfect, but certainty that you can handle what comes. That you don't need to chase anymore. That when things arrive, you'll meet them with steadiness, not fear. You're not waiting anymore. You're here. And everything that arrives from this place won't feel like luck. It will feel like life finally matching the person you became.